Hey, my fellow YouTubers and viewers. Jacob here, and I want to talk to you about something having to do with atheism and apologetics. So apologetics has to do with reason, it has to do with logic, it has to do with being able to formulate concepts of truth in order to determine what is real and what is, of course, unreal. And here's the thing, when it comes to naturalism, there's many atheists who promote naturalism. The idea that all that there is matter and space and time, and that's all that exists. And there's nothing else that could exist beyond that, okay? Especially when it comes to consciousness or God or some higher entity that doesn't depend on such things. But here's the thing, okay? The brain is made up of atoms, it's made up of different types of chemicals, it's made up of fat. And if you were to cut up the brain and pour the fluids of the brain into a testing tube, like the ones you would find in a science lab, and you were to get that testing tube and, cause other chemical reactions, and it starts fizzing and whatnot, that's all that the brain is made up of. How are we to say that such chemical reactions determine truth? Based on what proof, what logical proof, or what evidence would we be able to say that such things can determine something like truth, which doesn't depend on anyone's opinion? It doesn't depend on those fluids or those chemicals in any person's brain. Even if a host of individuals agree with the concept, they're still depending on these chemical fluids, right? So anytime an atheist or a naturalist, or not all atheists are naturalists, but anytime a naturalist tells you, hey, you know what, how do you know God exists? Where's the proof? Where's the logic? Of course, there's logical reasons and deductive arguments for God. Many of you have already heard them, right? From the likes of William Lane Craig and several other, John Lennox, for example, and several other speakers. So there is logical proofs, but here's the thing. Logic, truth, is a theist thing. Any idea of any concept of being able to know what's true and what's factual, that depends on the idea of there actually being a truth that exists beyond matter, space, time, and these chemical fluids running in our brain, okay? We cannot say with these chemical fluids that these chemical fluids are logical, that they produce truth, that they're, anything beyond than just chemicals reacting, and that we have no control over. So anytime an atheist talks about truth, facts, or whatnot, they have no business talking about those things, especially if it depends on their subjective opinion and the fluids in their brain. Okay. It's like you get a test tube of these chemicals, and these test tube of chemicals are saying that these test tube of chemicals can produce truth, facts, and whatnot. And it just can't. It can't. It doesn't exist. It's circular reasoning. It's like when atheists say, how do you know the Bible is true? Because the Bible says so. Well, how do you know that what the chemicals tell you is true? Because the chemicals say so? Now, there is several logical, secular reasons to believe that God exists. There are many individuals who have came up with the evidences, like the Kalam cosmological evidence. You look that up if you don't know what that is. And there's, the fine-tuning argument for creation. And the best person who gives that argument is William Lane Craig. And then there's the moral and truth argument, which I'm kind of providing for you right now. Haven't really covered morals, how morals do not exist in atheism. Now, don't get me wrong, atheists can be moral. It's very subjective. It's completely subjective, actually, and there is no way to know what is truly right or wrong. Everything's just based on these chemicals. And then others will say, well, your own brain is made up of chemicals and fluids and whatnot. Yeah, but I'm not the one who's making the conclusion that all that exists are chemicals and stuff, and that we don't have free will, or that we can't know truth, because that's the logical conclusion from your viewpoint. But from my viewpoint, I understand that space-time at one time didn't exist. In fact, if you look at all the logical arguments, everything comes back to no infinites. There cannot be an infinite number of things in the past. It's just illogical. And we see that, space-time came into existence. The universe does have an age. You atheists out there, you need to look that up. Universe has an age. That means the matter was created. Matter didn't always exist. Just look at the heat death theory. If there's any evidence for the universe having a beginning and for it not having always existed, it's the heat death theory, which basically tells us that entropy is increasing, that everything in the universe is burning out. It's like when you light a match on fire, it turns to ashes. Anyone with a brain understands that once something turns to ashes, you cannot relight it on fire again. So the entire universe, our sun, everything will eventually burn out. Everything's transforming into a cold state of matter, kind of like ashes. And so our entire universe will eventually not have heat any longer. It's called the heat death theory, if you want to look it up. So here's a funny thing. A lot of atheists tend to be very picky. They cherry pick theories. They say, oh, I'm for the theory of evolution because it fits my worldview, if it fits my beliefs against God. But when it comes to these types of theories, or any theory that proves or kind of gives evidence for the universe not having always existed, then they're very skeptical. I'm skeptical of that theory, and blah blah blah. And there was a single cause to all things, a singularity. It always existed. And then after an eternity of nothing, boom, we have what we call something. We have our subjective fluids telling us that what we can see is what exists here. Okay, but we can also deduct and conclude that there's things that exist beyond what we can see, and that our fluids don't determine truth or facts. Have a blessed day, guys, and God bless.